Hello, and welcome to our live podcast episode. So today we'll be talking about astrology. It's part 2, talking about Jupiter and Pluto to start with. Anyway, it was a question that I have posed as a poll on my Facebook group, asking people what else they would like to hear about in regards to their astrology chart. Two of the options that I've put on there were Pluto and Jupiter, and most people basically voted on that. So hence, that's why we're doing this. If anyone is watching live, please, even if you don't have any questions, just say hello. We would really appreciate you just leaving a comment, saying hi. And if you don't have any questions, please leave them until the end of the live. Or if you posted earlier, we'll just come back to it at the end, just so you know. And I have Mel Stevens with me today. I'm Kat. If this is the first time that you're watching this podcast episode, which is available on YouTube, and I am also sharing it on my podcast, on all podcast sort of available channels. I'm Kat, spiritual medium and healer. And Mel, I'll leave you to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Melanie. I'm a spiritual teacher, Reiki master, and tarot reader.
Perfect. And we are both based in UK, but we both have our services available online. So wherever you are in the world, if you'd like to find out more about what it is that we can offer, please have a look in the description, because we have all of our links there, and you can have a little look around our websites and our socials to just find out a little bit more. Okay, so I asked in my Facebook group, if someone would like to know about Jupiter. Well, I said, do you want to learn about Jupiter or Pluto or this? But there were Jupiter and Pluto kind of, I think equally people were interested. So I would like to share with you guys what information those two planets can bring to your life. So if you have a natal chart, your natal birth chart, astrological chart, which you can get for free online, you just type in your search natal chart, free natal chart, however you want to, put it in, and I'm sure there will be a load of different websites that will give you that option. So before we get into it, I wanted to share the glyphs. So glyphs are little icons, symbols for each planet, just so that you know where to look on your chart. Of course, you can search for all of that information, but I'm trying to make your life a little bit easier. So I'm just going to try and share it and quickly show you now, if you're watching this on YouTube. If you bear with me.
Ask a question, Kat.
Of course.
If you're searching online, and what I'll do, I'll just type, because the spelling of natal people might not know, but what's the difference then? Is a birth chart a natal chart, or are they two different things, or is it the same word?
I think natal basically means birth.
Okay.
When you natal means birth, and I think that's, I don't know, is that whether that comes from Latin or something. When you're also, for those expecting or having children, you'd know that you would have antenatal classes, prenatal, before birth kind of classes. It just means birth.
Wonderful.
Basically. So I suppose, it's a good question, because some people might wonder what that means when they listen to astrologers and stuff. It's basically your birth chart, because natal means birth.
Fabulous. I've just popped that in the comments as well for anybody that's listening, with the spelling of natal as well. So if you do want to give that a quick Google. Yeah, I've done mine, and when you type in natal chart, loads of websites come up, so you can just pick one just to get the actual chart. But
that's such a good point, because actually, when you look up information online about different aspects of your chart, of your birth chart, a lot of times the information that comes up will be telling you to kind of look at, are you asking about your, let's say, Venus in Scorpio natal, or are you asking for Venus in Scorpio? Oh gosh, not transition, but oh no, where when the planets are moving across the sky and they're like transiting your chart. It means it's, oh my gosh, it just eluded me. I'm gonna find it in a second, but it will be asking you whether you're looking at a natal or a transition of Venus being in Scorpio, which, as we know, because planets move all the time, they will be in each sign, at certain points of time. So that might mean different things. If let's say Venus is transiting your Scorpio, I don't know, in April, whatever, then that means that this sort of energy will be prevalent within your life within April only, kind of thing. But then if you're looking at natal, then it means it's just there for you all the time, because it's and it's usually the natal language that they're using. I hope that makes sense. Let me know, Mel, if I just made it more confusing.
No, it's working out, when you look at the position of the planet. So the way I think of it, and I read somebody said this somewhere, is your birth chart is like a screenshot of the sky when you were born. And that made sense for me then. I was like, right, it's the position of the planets in terms of which zodiac sign, so which constellation the planet was in at the moment of your birth. But then, of course, we get that and we get our birth chart and we understand this is why we've got certain personality traits, and this is why these things are sort of mapped out for us when we're born. But then the astrology part comes in, where it's, well, what's happening in the sky now?
Yeah.
How does that relate to my birth chart? And then it's like, well, if a certain planet is in the zodiac sign it was in when you were born and it's in there again now, it's that can have an impact, isn't it? That
yeah, exactly.
our heads around, oh, right, okay, I understand now why people monitor the sky. It's like, well, surely if we've got all the information because this is what happened when we were born, that's all we need. But it's these life events as well that connect to the positions of the planets, like the Saturn return and things like that. It is complex. It is a complex subject, but it's trying to break it down, isn't it, and get our heads around.
Yeah, that's why you'd want to just understand the difference between the natal information and the transiting energies of planets, which are happening all the time because the planets are moving all the time. Yeah. So just to show the little icon symbols, they're called glyphs. They're called glyphs in astrology. So we are looking for your Jupiter. So this Jupiter here that I'm circling around on the left-hand side at the bottom row. And then your Pluto, which would be the very glyph on the right in the bottom row as well. Sometimes, depending on where you get the chart from, which website, sometimes it looks like a P letter, the Pluto. But majority of the times, this is the actual icon that you'll see. But sometimes it might look like a P letter, like a which is a little bit easier, I suppose, because it kind of suggests it's Pluto.
But that's Venus and Mars, and I can remember Jupiter because it looks like a 24, and the Sun's quite an obvious one. The others, I find I struggle to remember them sometimes, but it's just getting used to them, isn't it?
Yeah, that's such a good point. 24. I actually haven't thought of that. Yeah, it's like a 2 and a 4 in one. Yeah. I remember Neptune quite well because it's the god of underwater, which is who has the whatever this is called, this little 3-pointed fork kind of thing from mythology, Greek and maybe Roman mythology, maybe both. So I just always see him like this god of waters, oceans and seas, and he always has this spear. I suppose it's a spear in his hand. And moon, of course, moon is moon. It's just quite a simple one. But yeah, I mean, all of this information, none of us have to memorize this at all to be able to read our chart. It's just because the information is included within the description wherever you look for your natal chart, really. So it's just for your own information, I suppose. If you would like a mini reading, like for instance, your 3 major planets, sun, moon, or rising, I can do that for you. I'm not currently advertising any sort of official astrology readings in a sense, but I am a very keen enthusiast and I have been doing some chart readings already. So although I don't have it available on my website, you can just message me on Facebook. Link is in the description, and we can arrange something for me to write a little reading for you from your natal chart. So I only read natal charts, which is your birth chart. I don't do predictive astrology. It's just who you are when you were born, what's your soul's evolution, your strengths, maybe your weaknesses, and if you have a question about a particular area of your life. So for instance, if you'd like to find out something more about relationships, then I can also have a look at different areas of your life, kind of, and give you an idea of maybe, how to approach this area of your life if it's something that's, for instance, challenging for you, let's say. But I wouldn't be looking at any predictive stuff in terms of when will I find someone and that sort of questions. That's not within my skills. I'm more interested in, I'm just going to remove this screen share. I'm more interested in evolutionary astrology, which is more of what our soul came here to this earth to evolve in. So that's also more of so it touches on the mystical, metaphysical, but also the psychology of our selves, of our incarnation, of our soul's desires and direction, sort of how we're living our life so that we can evolve as a soul, because I believe that we all have a soul and it came here to this life for a reason, to evolve and learn and experience different things in life. So that's how I look at the charts, and that's where my focus is. That's what I'm most fascinated about when it comes to astrology. So if you're interested in that stuff and you would like me to have a little look at your chart, please let me know. Send me a message on Facebook. Okay, so let's go on to Jupiter and Pluto, I suppose. Just maybe, Mel, did you ever pay more attention on those planets on your chart? Do you remember? Because you said you had a written.
I do, and I've got it on my phone. I'm just trying to think. I think Jupiter for me is in Libra, or was when I was born. I can't remember Neptune, but Jupiter was definitely in Libra when I was born. And I will have it actually on my phone. I'm going to have a look because it's going to bug me.
That's really interesting, because whilst you're looking for it, I'll just quickly recap if anyone remembers from our first conversation on astrology. Mel, you mentioned that you have quite a lot of Aries and Libra energy in your chart. Right. So that means that you have, a number of planets within Aries or Libra, right? So they're kind of like prevalent in your chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is actually very interesting. And I think didn't you have north or south? No, it was a Mercury. Okay.
I've got Neptune in Sagittarius.
Neptune. Mm-hmm. very spiritual teacher. I mean, Sagittarius is a sign that's ruled by Jupiter. So it's everything to do with Jupiter being the higher mind, philosophical, expansive, benefic planet. Kind of our teacher, everything to do with higher minded, and Neptune being very spiritual. So as the that's a very, very, very apt combination for what it is that you're doing. I mean,
Yeah.
when just you calling yourself, is it spiritual mentor or teacher? That's very Neptune in Sagittarius. So that's very interesting to see always how astrology comes to life. Okay, so without any further ado, let me just start then. Let's start with the lucky planet. Let's call it lucky, because Jupiter is considered to be one of the so-called benefic planets, which means it brings luck. It's the positive that it brings into our life, the expansion, the positive expansion, the growth of our soul. Right? It's a planet that rules our ninth house, and our ninth house is the house of God. That's one of the ways that astrologers describe it. It's a house of our, as I said, higher mind. It's anything to do with philosophy and kind of the higher studies. And it could also mean higher studies in the sense of this is the place where you would be maybe taking a degree in something, or you're learning courses, something above your main school years, right? That you kind of have to do. It's where you're developing yourself even further to expand and grow as a person in life. And so wherever Jupiter is located in your chart, that means these are the energies you need to embody in this life in order for good luck and fortune to come your way. So which sign is your Jupiter in will tell you what sort of traits, your personality traits to show, to be bold with, confident with, and to use so that then things come your way. So for instance, you said you have, that's interesting. So you have Jupiter in Libra. I have Jupiter in Aries. They're opposite because, so I am, it's really cool because I have Jupiter in Aries, which means I need to focus on me and be bold and confident in going after what I want without looking at others, really. It's important that I address my needs, my desires, and I go for it boldly. And if I sort of embody that energy, then that's when the good stuff come my way. If I go and let's say hide in my south node of Libra, of just considering everyone else and what everyone else is saying and doing and wanting from me, then that lack is kind of like turned around for me. Now you have the opposite, which is interesting because you're an Aries sun, so you would naturally be like this, very initiating. However, you have the Jupiter in Libra, meaning include others, other points of views, because Libra is everything about the other. But it's also the sign of beauty, bringing harmony and balance, right? So if you employ and embody those qualities, then that's where the luck comes your way.
And isn't it funny? I mean, I love it when you discover this stuff. Not later in life. I'm not that old, but you know, when your life's already played out. Because when I set my spiritual business up, I chose my logo of the balance stones because for me, spirituality and working with, you know, in the spiritual realms is balanced by being grounded in earth and here on the earth, you know, and working spiritually and working energetically has to be balanced with being present and being here. And I operate best when I have that balance in my life. And it is a struggle for me because I get very excited and carried away with things, and I have high mental energy and I overdo it. And I've always been like that. I get really excited about things and I obsess over them, and then I wear myself out. So that was why I created my logo, balance, all about balance. And Libra is all about balance. And I do operate best when I'm balanced. So it 100% fits.
Yeah, and yeah, so it's really interesting how that works because, for instance, I'm on the other end of the stick where I'm very good at reading other people's needs very well, and sort of acting on that if needed, and yet that's not where the luck comes for me. That's not, I need to be very assertive, initiating, and just going for what I want, and being also confident with that, and being able to put I suppose boundaries around my needs and my desires as well. So yeah, so that's really interesting. Now I wanted to also mention, because I don't want to give too much information because it can get a little bit complex, but for those who feel like they would like to look into it a little bit further, there actually is a video on YouTube done by an astrologer who talks about all of the placements and the details of what I'm about to say. So if you're interested, please let me know in the comments and I'll post it, that link to that video. But because Jupiter is the benefic planet, it's the lucky planet, it rules ninth house. That's where our luck is as well in life, because ninth, the houses are more of the areas of our life, right? So whatever, now you might have a different ruler of the ninth house. It doesn't have to be Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the zodiac sign that's ruled by Jupiter, but depending on obviously your own chart, you might have a different ruler of the ninth house. But you might want to check what planets you have in the ninth house. That's one, first and foremost, what planets, because the qualities of that planet, if you again embody them, exude them, and be very generous and very positive in expression of that planet, then again, this is where your luck can come in. So for example, if you have Mars in the ninth house, and Mars is mythological war, god of war. Okay, so this is where our passion, aggression also comes in, our action, what we're motivated to do, what we really, act upon. But then each planet has the light and the shadow aspect. So with Mars, it could be taking action, being passionate, being assertive, all of the Aries qualities, because Mars rules Aries. But on the shadow side, it can be angry, it can be just a little bit too, I suppose, maybe defensive, maybe what's the word? When you argue with other people a little bit, not controversial. Confrontational. There we go. So when you, let's say, embody those qualities, then you wouldn't, it kind of doesn't work in your favor, let's say.
Yeah.
So if you have, whatever planet you have in that ninth house, have a little read online. What are the light and shadow aspects? What else that planet might cover? And then you'll know that if you exude these light aspects of that planet, then that will also bring you luck and positivity into your life. The other thing is So opposite ninth house, so when you have your chart and it's round, ninth house is at the top somewhere, and then the opposite will be the third house. If you have any planets in the third house, that's also equally important. So if there's nothing in the ninth house, have a look at the third house. Now, if you have no planets whatsoever in any of these houses, then you look at the sign that's ruling that ninth house, and you just read up on the sign qualities. Sign qualities, and one last thing I'll add, and the ruler of that sign and where it's at. So as I'm saying, so for instance, Mars is the ruler of Aries, Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. So if you have, let's say, Cancer in the ninth house, then have a look where your moon is, because moon is ruling that ninth house. And then you can have a look at the information there. Now that's it. I'm not going to be going deeper into that. If someone wants me to have a look at that for them, please let me know and I'll do that for a small fee. But yeah, those are, so because those are all Jupiterian energies, that's kind of where your luck sits. One interesting thing, maybe I'll just mention, if you do have a moon in your ninth house, moon also rules, apart from our emotion, internal life, and all of these things, it also rules women in your life. So it's very possible that if you are exuding positive qualities of being generous, open, kind, blah, 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 towards women in your life, it might actually bring you a lot of luck. In general, you might benefit because it's about benefiting from women. For example, like your mother, because the moon rules mother as well. So little bits and pieces you can find out this way. Yeah, so I think that's it for the Jupiter that I wanted to cover, because like I said, I don't want to go into much detail, and there's a lot that I also don't know. I would have to research. But it's an important point, I feel, to have a look at, so that you know what to do or how to behave, or what qualities within yourself, because this is all within you already anyway. You know, what qualities within yourself to nurture, really, and to show, right? In the way you behave, you act in the world and stuff like that. Okay, so any questions, Mel?
Actually, there's one. Earlier, I'm just sort of winding back a little bit, because earlier on you mentioned when I said my Jupiter's in Libra and yours is in Aries, and you said, oh, Libra is the opposite sign to Aries. Now, is that there's 12 zodiac signs? Aries is number 1, Libra is number 7. So it literally, if you draw zodiac signs around in a circle, Aries would appear opposite Libra.
Yeah.
And does that mean that they are opposite in terms of the traits? Aries and Libra are opposite characteristics as well?
Mostly, I think. Let's see, because definitely Aries and Libra. I'm just trying to. Yeah, yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it's not just the element. It's, for instance, so Libra is, because you know the chart, the round chart, the Western chart, has the 12 zodiac signs that start with Aries, right? Like Aries is always the first, and whatever is in the first, then, which is all about me, my body, my image, my stuff. Opposite is Libra, which is everything to do with the other. Then you would have, let's say, Virgo will be opposite Pisces. Virgo is more down to earth, practical, very perfectionist, very focused on details and stuff, whereas Pisces is the complete opposite, right? Pisces is spiritual. Pisces is a little bit, maybe a little bit of an illusion, like we don't know, we can't grasp it really in our hands, because Pisces is very, dreamy and all of these aspects. So yes, so that would also be the opposite energy. So yeah, most, I think all of them, I think I should say yes, all of them are opposite, because most of the time then that's when you see your north and south node, how opposite they are. That's why they're always in the opposite sign, opposite as in placement, and also sign, of course, as an effect. But if you see it on your chart, you will never have, let's say, south node right next to your north node. It will always be straight line opposite to where the north node is, because you need to sort of learn to apply the other side of, or the opposite side, more like, of what you know, what you're comfortable with, or what you've known to do for probably lifetimes. So yeah. Okay, so with Pluto, so now Pluto is not called a benefic planet. I think it is actually even called malefic, or is it just neutral? I don't know. But this is the planet where we that will tell us about our crises in life. But these are the kind of crises that will then help us rise from our ashes. So this is also a rising from your ashes phoenix kind of energy. So this is the energy, because Pluto is like the last planet. This is basically the overall evolution of your soul. So this will set the overall evolution of your soul within this lifetime, because every other planet, or every transitions, every movements that are happening within your chart are kind of serving Pluto. So wherever your Pluto is situated, everything else that happens is so that you can kind of evolve on that level in this area, wherever it is that your Pluto is. So for instance, and that, yeah, hang on, let me just go back. So this is where your shadow will be, for sure, or at least one, some of the aspects of your shadow, because this is where you almost have to dig deep and see your shadow and go through crises and, breakdowns, whatever difficulties, challenges in your life, so that you can then really emerge and evolve. And you will eventually become more empowered, because Pluto is one of the things, is where we build our power towards. Okay, so let's think of an example. So one thing I also want to mention, Pluto is a generational planet, first of all, let's remember. So there will be generations of people that have Pluto in the same sign, okay? So I wouldn't pay that much attention to the generational information, personally. Of course, it applies to you, but it applies on a bigger scale, okay? So there will be generations of people that have a Pluto in a certain sign. There is, again, very interesting, I think, video done by an astrologer who talks about all of the generations, as we call them, the boomers, the millennials, the Gen Z, Gen X, and all of that stuff, and how well that correlates with how Pluto was changing signs each time. And she said, because she made this whole research on how that correlates 2 or 3 years, because Pluto spends it can spend, I think the shortest time is 10 years. The longest time is at least, it's just something above 20. I can't remember exactly. I don't think it goes up to 30 or anything, but it's 20 something years in a sign. And so even within our, let's call it mainstream reality, people have noticed that each generation has their own flavor, right? So they started calling everyone something, and it correlates very well with each time Pluto was changing signs.
Oh,
So she did this whole research, and she talks about each generation that was living through that time, and then how that generation shows up and what they're doing in the world, and because we can really see the we can really see it. Like, you don't even have to be an astrologer to see, for instance, how I think it's the baby boomers clash with the millennials, because millennials are the Pluto in Scorpio, and they're really there to break down all of that power, that sets that have been created during Pluto in Leo, which is all about building grand, sort of grand self, grand world. So all of the major corporations, major millionaires, billionaires that we hear about these days, that were just, very Leo, let's say, or Pluto in Leo, they will be building all of these powerful empires, right? Leo would be also empire and stuff like that. And then they're clashing quite a lot with, for instance, Pluto and Scorpio people, who are all about breaking it down and really looking at the ugly bits, right? Because Pluto rules Scorpio also. In the ancient astrology, it was Mars that ruled Scorpio. So all of these energies are very scorpionic, and they're very much, we're going, let's say, underground, because Pluto was the lord of underworld. And we're looking at the dirt and the ugly stuff, all the scorpionic shadow, and we're breaking down the power and the stuff. So we were seeing a lot of that stuff coming up. And also, sorry, I'm actually going on a tangent now, but I thought it was so interesting because I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it, how it was during the years that I was growing up. So I was born in 87. So through the 90s, but it started in the 80s, where we heard so much about serial killers. Because those were kind of the years where all of that darkness, that ugly face, let's say, of humanity just kind of started emerging. And there were so many, whether it's a TV program, movies, on the topics that were very taboo as well. So that's because Scorpio is very taboo. And I was just, just thinking about my life, basically, and how that applies with astrology and the generations and stuff. And I thought, that's actually so interesting that during that time, all of that came out. And that's kind of how I grew up, let's say, within this sort of environment with all this information in the media that we don't hear about these days anymore. There isn't another case of a 10, a serial killer who's been rampant for 10 years or something ridiculous. But that was all Pluto and Scorpio. All of that gunk, let's call it, was coming out. And so people with Pluto and Scorpio would be, when it comes to their personal lives now, because this is obviously global, when it comes to their personal life, you would look at the house. Where is Pluto sitting in your house? So which area is it in which you will have a lot of shadow? If you're curious what shadow is, please have a look at our conversation on shadow work. We do have a podcast episode covering that. And then how, what you kind of need to work through to then reclaim or grow in your power, because Pluto wants you to grow in your power. The soul wants to evolve. When soul evolves, it grows in power, right? And then on the human level, you basically feel more empowered in your life, and it's also sort of can become your gift to help others and heal others if you choose to, if it's within your destiny, let's call it.
Pluto's actually, I'm going to get my phone and have a look. My Pluto's in Libra. Libra up until 1983. So yours is in Scorpio then.
Mm-hmm.
Yours is in Scorpio, but it's currently in Capricorn.
Yeah.
And I
Well, for a little while in Aquarius, it just entered Aquarius until June 11th.
Oh, okay.
So Pluto just entered Aquarius the end of March, like 23rd, I think. So, but it will be going retrograde from June back to Capricorn until I think it's January 2024. So this is still an important time because this is a little glimpse for everyone to see what is it that we are overcoming, what themes are coming up that we will then, let's say, live through from January 2024 up until 2044, I think the whole 20 years. So that's the transition bit, right? So that's where we look at the transitions to see where the Pluto is transiting through which house right now for us, and so what themes will be coming up. So that doesn't have to be your natal placement of Pluto. That's your transiting Pluto in Aquarius.
Right, okay. So my Pluto is in Libra. I have loads of Libra in my chart. And of course, Libra also is about fairness and justice. And I have a very strong sense of fairness and justice. And I get really irritated if things feel unfair. It gets to me. It really gets to me. And yeah, that could be why. But I think that's interesting about
So what house is it in then?
Third house.
Okay, so that's communication. So that's the house of communication, education, siblings as well. So it could have any themes on siblings, neighbors, neighborhood. So any sort of Geminian themes, topics. And it's the education, not in a sense of a higher education like Sagittarius, which is the opposite. It's the smaller, the figuring out what to do on a kind of, let's say, maybe daily basis, or third house kind of things. I'm just thinking of it. So third house is ruled by Mercury, so anything mercurial basically. So that's also business, communication. But yeah, it's a lot about Geminian type of communication and understanding, and sort of, because Gemini third house is also taking into consideration other people's views and having conversations about it, sort of seeing situations from different point of views, applying that. But then I would, if someone is researching third house, I would, or any houses where your Pluto is, have a look at every single meaning. So it's not just the psychological meaning, but have a look at everything else. Like I said, the neighborhood, short trips, siblings, it's a house of siblings. Those are the only things that are coming to my mind right now. So all of these things would be included in sort of your soul's. It's a very social sign as well. So how you're, social. See, like little bits are popping in here and there for me. But yeah, have a little look online as to what, even in so-called mundane astrology. So that's like an everyday astrology that covers things like I just said, short travels, neighbors, neighborhood, your local area, things like that. So it could be that your local area, your neighborhood, your environment when you were growing up might have been difficult in some way or something. I don't know. But have a look at descriptions online. And this is basically where big shifts and big crises would occur. Even if it doesn't have to be one, ever situation of a crisis, it just could be, a little bit prolonged. Probably Usually when we're young, we usually go through the biggest issues, I would say, related to that. And then as we grow older, we just start to emerge as the phoenix, right, from the ashes, whatever it is that we've healed or we're healing, and then we are growing in power and confidence. And then, so I have my Pluto in fifth house, and that's very much about self-expression, which is very on point. Fifth house is a Leo house, so it's anything to do with being open and even vulnerable about yourself, about yourself, really. It's how you express yourself, how you use your creative talents. Do you use your creative talents? Are you suppressing them and things like that? Kind of what's in the shadow, maybe, of your creativity, of your expression. And that definitely has been a theme for me. And when I looked at that information, I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. It has other. Oh, this is also where we could be a little bit obsessive, depending again on the subject of that house, because obsession, again, it's one of the shadows that we might need to work through. But there are many, many other things within the fifth house, again, that I can't remember. Right. Oh, children, apparently. So I'm waiting to see if my child transforms my life in some way, because it could also, it doesn't mean that it's every single thing that's on the list, by the way. If you do look up your house online, and it will have a list of things, doesn't mean that every single topic of that life is the thing that will be creating this huge crisis or transformation for you. You have to, that's the whole thing about looking at someone's chart as a whole to get the fuller story. But I'm sure whoever is listening to it would know themselves a little bit more already, so they would be able to apply, that information to what they have lived through, what they might have struggled, but what they probably feel more empowered with now, depending, I suppose, depends on how old they are. So yeah, and then I just wanted to quickly mention also, because we talked about South Node and North Node in our last episode on astrology, and I have just recently learned, because I was researching evolutionary astrology, and there was an astrologer talking about Pluto and the nodes on how well they can work together when it comes to this whole evolution of our soul. And it's, when I say evolution of our soul, it means also how we are breaking through any sort of psychological transformations, right? So this is evolution of our soul is basically, on a human level, feels like psychological breakthrough of some sort within our psyche, within our internal self of being. So she quite nicely connected the two. So Pluto would be, because it's a generational planet, it's a very kind of big theme. And like I said, each house can have a different topics, different themes, different little things that you can apply. And then you can look at your nodes to get some more information, because Pluto and the nodes are both very strongly affecting your evolution, on how that might play out in a little bit more detail. So for instance, when I was listening to that and I was thinking, okay, so I had Pluto in fifth house, so I'm obviously learning to self-express. And then it would be sort of, well, how are you learning to self-express? And then I look at my South Node, which I said was in Libra, which is because that thing I didn't actually mention in the first episode, where you have your South Node, you're most likely exhibiting the shadow part of that sign, if that's where your South Node is. So Libra shadow self would be things like not listening to your own opinion, not letting your own opinion be even within your awareness, because you're so focused on what other people say, what other people do. So you might be very susceptible to the outside world.
Yeah. Sorry, 1 second.
To the outside world and the opinions of everyone else but you, right? Which then I thought, wow, that's actually very true. for me. And if anyone has been following our podcast up until now, you'll see probably that I talk about it quite a bit in my examples, especially I think in the spiritual awakening episode and the shadow work episode. Whenever I share my own story, that's kind of what I kept talking about, because that's what I lived through. But at the time, I haven't even looked at it in that, in astrology, I didn't see it because I haven't heard yet someone talk about Pluto and South Node in that way. So it's sort of like whatever shadow or transformation you're meant to be going through within your house where Pluto is, it can show up. When you want more details, you look at your South Node and North Node. So where you're sort of starting from, and then your North Node being where you're moving towards, kind of thing. So then in my example, again, because I have North Node in Aries, so I'm learning to just be me boldly, and just think about me. And so I say what I think, and I'm not worried or affected so much by other people's opinions, which then might affect my direction in life. I need to follow what I feel is good for me. And so I feel like perhaps people who have a similar placement to me would only understand what it's like to not know what it is that you even want. Because sometimes I would talk about it, and I think, not everyone is like this. They might not understand what I'm on about, but it was a very, very big theme in my life. And I can see it now, how that correlates with the Pluto and the South and the North Node.
I never realized there was a connection between the three. I know a little bit about the North Node and the South Node, but I didn't realize there was such a correlation. And I didn't actually know that much about Pluto. And I guess because Pluto's not technically part of the solar system anymore, I don't think. So we kind of forget about Pluto a bit, don't we? I didn't realize it had such a huge impact on our lives.
But it's interesting, that you say that it's not that visible, and that all of these information can actually give us a little bit glimpse of how that means it turns out to be in our life. Because you might not think of it, it's not something that right there glaring you in your eye, in your face rather. You just, but it's there. It might be.
Trying to wave at him, I'm going, don't come here. Okay. It's okay.
That's right. It might be hidden. It might be hidden, and yet it has such a big importance, So yeah. So I would encourage anyone to have a look at it. And like I said before, if you're interested in a little, like if you feel like it's too much and you'd like me to look at it, I'm happy to do so because I love this stuff.
Yeah, it is a huge area, and I think breaking it down and starting small with a few bits, but understanding, deep diving into how Jupiter affects us, how Pluto affects us, what the Saturn return is, and all of these things, it makes a big complex thing. It kind of breaks it into bite-sized chunks and just gives us a little bit more understanding. Otherwise, when you get your birth chart, you just look at it and think, it just makes my head want to explode. I don't know what to do with all of this. So just getting those little bits of information, and I mean, there's so much just to get from the position of one planet in one particular house. You get so much information from that. And like your birth chart, it's no wonder it's such a complex.
But that's also why there are so many different astrologers. Like you might find, depending on what you want, you might find an astrologer for relationships, and they focus on that. Most of the astrologers do just look at your natal chart, birth chart anyway, and they can have a look. But then do you want to add to it predictive stuff? Do you want to add relationship? And I think it's called, there is another name for it, I can't remember, where they look at your chart and your partner's chart and how they overlap, for instance, and they can do that for you. And then there are evolutionary astrologers who talk about things like I just was talking about, because I feel that's fascinating. And they can look at your evolutionary astrology would be more of your soul's evolution, your karma, your life lessons and stuff like that, and more of a psychological view of your psyche and stuff like that. And there are mundane astrologers that just look at everyday events and sort of global, how it affects us globally and stuff like that. So there is a multitude of them. So once I got into studying astrology, I was like, okay, this is a lot. But I think my main interest stayed within the evolutionary aspect of it, that I feel most fascinated about. Ancestry, karma, past lives, that kind of stuff, evolution of our soul. Okay. So I guess I was kind of it was just me talking about it the whole hour. I thought
I love astrology. I find it really fascinating, and I have to keep reminding myself whenever you're saying about these planets, I go, no, let me just check where mine is, because I've got that app that I mentioned in the last week, where it reminds me of my birth chart. So I've actually got it on my phone, so I can keep dipping back in and out of it, which is great, because it's like you say, breaking it down and just getting it in bite-sized pieces means that it makes more sense to me anyway. So it's nice to break it up and take a deep dive today into a couple of other areas.
Yeah. Cool.
Fabulous.
Okay. Well, I guess we have come to a time, unless there's anything else that you want to say or share about this. I don't know, because I'm taking so much time. I feel a bit bad, but it's I thought I would go through it a bit faster, but I suppose it didn't work out. But it's all interesting. I hope someone has learned something from it and they know where to go to search for a little bit more information, and they know that they can contact me as well for mini reading of these little placements.
And did you put did you say people to contact you through Facebook?
Yes. Please contact me through Facebook mainly. I think Facebook is the best. It's the easiest for me to get messages. But the other second option would be through my website. Okay. So website where there is my email or a contact form, or Facebook. Please try not to contact me through Instagram or TikTok, because I'm not on there as often, and I'm not often notified either. So yeah. Awesome.
Apologies for the noise. You can't put shopping away quietly. It's just not possible. Anyway.
Okay. See you Thursday for the live readings.
Yep, Thursday, 5 o'clock on YouTube for our live readings. And then also same place, same time next week for our conversation. I don't know what we're going to talk about yet. We'll have to plan that in the week and we'll advertise it.
Yeah, we do have some other ideas, by the way, of what we'll be doing. So we'll leave it as a surprise. Yeah. So I won't say any more. Cool. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Mel. And just as usual, just for everyone, if you want to contact either of us, there are details in the description. So please do not hesitate. Okay, bye.
All right, cheers, everyone.